HOA tried to ruin my life, so I legally dismantled them one lawsuit at a time. Hey Reddit, buckle up. This is the story of how my HOA declared war on me for no reason and how I burned them to the ground without breaking a single law. It's long, but if you've ever fantasized about destroying a petty, power-drunk HOA, you'll want to stick around. So, a few years ago I bought a house in what I thought was a nice suburban neighborhood. I'm a 35-year-old mechanical engineer, divorced, and have a 6-year-old daughter who lives with me part-time. I chose the place because it had great schools, clean streets, and a sense of safety for my kid. Of course, it had an HOA, but I figured that was just part of suburban life. I didn't realize I was walking into a miniature dictatorship run by someone who I'll call Karen, because, of course, her name is Karen. Karen is the HOA president. Imagine Dolores Umbridge with a love for power, an obsession with neighborhood aesthetics, and absolutely nothing better to do with her time. She walks around the neighborhood with a damn clipboard, documenting every offense like she's building a case for The Hague. It started small. 3 weeks after I moved in, I got a violation notice for improper trash bin storage. Apparently, I brought my trash bins in at 6:30 p.m. instead of the required 6 p.m. Whatever. I shrugged it off, paid the fine, and made a mental note to watch the clock on Mondays. But the notices kept coming. 1 week it was for having overgrown grass, it was literally 3 inches tall. Another time, it was because my daughter had drawn flowers on the driveway with sidewalk chalk. Sidewalk chalk. They claimed it was graffiti. Then came the big one. I received a $250 fine for unauthorized exterior modifications. What was the modification? I hung a small wooden swing on the tree in my front yard for my daughter. A swing. I showed up to the next HOA meeting to plead my case. I brought my daughter with me, hoping the visual of a 6-year-old girl being told she can't have a swing would appeal to some shred of humanity. Nope. Karen, in her pastel blazer and icy smile, told me I should have submitted an architectural change request. For a swing. On a tree. At that point, I realized this wasn't just about rules. This was personal. I had unknowingly painted a target on my back the moment I moved in, probably because I didn't kiss the ring at the welcome meeting. So I started documenting everything. Every notice, every letter, every conversation I had with Karen or any board member, I recorded it, saved it, and backed it all up. I also filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the county to get a copy of the HOA's bylaws, meeting minutes, and budget. What I found was interesting. Turns out, Karen had been president for 6 years, despite the bylaws stating the term limit was 2. The HOA hadn't held a proper election in over 5 years. Annual budgets were being approved without any actual meetings, and several landscaping contracts were being awarded to her brother-in-law's company at nearly double the going rate. So I lawyered up. I found a local attorney who specializes in HOA law, and we got to work. First, we sent a cease and desist letter challenging every fine they'd issued me that year, demanding a proper appeals process. Karen responded by slapping me with 3 more violations in 1 week. I guess she thought I'd back off. Nope. I was just getting started. With my lawyer's help, I filed a formal complaint with the state's HOA Oversight Committee. At the same time, I started talking to my neighbors, quietly, at first. I learned that Karen had been bullying half the neighborhood. Elderly folks were being fined for having holiday wreaths that were too large. One couple got penalized for leaving their garage door open for more than 10 minutes. With enough people on board, we organized. We called a special meeting, as allowed in the bylaws if 10% of residents sign a petition. Karen tried to block it. We served her with an injunction. At the special meeting, we had 75% of the neighborhood show up. We voted to remove Karen and 2 of her cronies from the board. They tried to shout us down, but the vote was valid, and the sheriff's deputy we hired as security kept the peace. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted nuclear revenge. So I filed a civil suit for harassment, selective enforcement, and emotional distress. My lawyer dug through every shady contract Karen had approved. Turns out her brother-in-law's landscaping company wasn't even licensed. We filed a report with the IRS and the state tax board. Karen ended up being investigated for tax fraud and embezzlement. And the cherry on top? Remember all those fines I had paid? With the HOA under new management, they reviewed my case and refunded every cent, plus they paid my legal fees as part of a settlement to avoid a class action lawsuit from other neighbors. Karen's house went up for sale 3 months later. Apparently, she moved in with her daughter out of state while the legal dust settled. No one's seen her since. Now the HOA is run by a sane group of people who actually care about the community. My daughter's swing is still hanging in that tree. And every time I walk past it, I smile, because that little piece of wood and rope is what started the war I won. TLDR, HOA president tried to bully me with fake fines and power trips. I documented everything, rallied the neighborhood, legally removed her, exposed her corruption, and got her investigated for fraud. Now I live in peace, and she's long gone. HOA fined me for putting up a porch swing. Turns out they were breaking several laws. I became their worst nightmare. Hey folks. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these, but here we are. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a get-off-my-lawn type. I'm just a regular dude who wanted to enjoy his house and drink sweet tea on the porch swing I built with my dad. But the HOA decided I was enemy number one. Spoiler alert, they picked the wrong guy, not because I'm scary, but because I'm stubborn and a quick learner when pissed off. So here's what went down. I bought a house in a quiet, older neighborhood in Texas last year. It's a cozy little 2-bedroom ranch with a big front porch. It needed some work, but that was part of the appeal. My dad and I spent weekends fixing it up, and one of our projects was building a wooden porch swing. Nothing fancy, just something to relax in and watch storms roll in. The swing lasted about 3 days before I got a violation notice in my mailbox. It was from the HOA, which, honestly, I didn't even realize we had. The letter said I had made an unauthorized structural change to the exterior facade and owed them a $150 fine. I thought it had to be a mistake. I mean, it's a swing. On a porch. Not a helipad. I tried calling the number on the notice. Got sent to voicemail. I emailed. No response. So I showed up at the next HOA meeting, totally naive, thinking this would be a quick fix. That's when I met the board. There were 4 of them. They sat behind a folding table like a panel of judges on a bad reality show. The president, who I'll call Linda, didn't even let me finish my sentence. She cut me off, said swings were a visual nuisance, and that I should have submitted a modification request form before altering the exterior. I asked if I could see the rule in the bylaws. She told me, it's not in the bylaws. It's part of the community standards packet, a packet I never received. Okay. Now I was annoyed. But still polite. I asked if I could get a copy of the packet. She said, you'll have to file a written request and pay the administrative fee. Then she moved on to the next topic. So I went home and started digging. I filed the request, paid the dumb fee, and got a 67-page PDF of vaguely written guidelines that were mostly lifted from some generic HOA template. Nowhere, I repeat, nowhere, did it say porch swings were prohibited. But I noticed something else: a lot of these rules weren't voted on by residents. They were added later by the board and marked as Board Addendum XXXX. I got curious. I spent the next 2 weekends learning way more about HOA law than I ever wanted to. I read the Texas Property Code. I read court cases. I joined a Facebook group for HOA nightmares. I even talked to an actual lawyer at one of those free consult clinics, who pointed out something huge. In Texas, HOAs are required to publicly record any changes to community rules with the county clerk in order to make them enforceable. The board addendums in my packet? Not recorded. Not enforceable. They were just pretending they were law. But it gets better. The lawyer also told me that Texas law requires HOAs to hold annual elections, provide open meeting minutes, and have a grievance process for disputes. Our HOA hadn't had a real election in 5 years. They never published meeting notes. And they denied every request for appeal with the same rubber-stamped denial letter. Now I was mad. So I wrote a letter, a very calm, very detailed, very legally informed letter. I cited the specific Texas property code statutes they were violating. I informed them that their enforcement authority on non-recorded rules was invalid. I told them if they didn't void my fine, I'd be submitting a formal complaint to the Texas Attorney General's office and the county. 1 week later, I got a letter back. My fine was waived as a courtesy, Sure. But I wasn't done. I printed copies of my letter, the statutes, and my swing photo, and handed them out at the next HOA meeting. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Turns out, once word got around, a bunch of neighbors had stories just like mine, made up violations, fake fees, ignored appeals. I proposed we elect a new board. According to the bylaws, we only needed 30% of the community to call a special election. I walked the neighborhood with a clipboard like I was running for office. People signed so fast I ran out of paper. We held the special election 2 months later. Linda and her cronies were not happy. But the votes were counted fair and square, and all 4 board members were replaced by people who actually live here and like swings. The new board published the actual rules, wiped the bogus fees from everyone's accounts, and set up a community garden where Linda used to complain about kids being too loud. Oh, and my swing? Still hanging. My dad added a cup holder to it. So yeah. I didn't start this war. But I finished it. And all it took was some reading, some grit, and 1 wooden swing. TLDR, HOA fined me for a porch swing. I read the laws, found out the HOA had no legal authority to enforce half their rules, exposed them, rallied the neighbors, and got them voted out. Now I drink sweet tea on my fully legal porch swing like a king.